gives me great pleasure to introduce our Poet Laureate of Orange County, who I embarrass perpetually calling him the Johnny Appleseed of poetry, because this man, since '96, has really created a phenomenon in the Hudson Valley that is ever growing, ever morphing, but nonetheless, its vitality is indelible, and it gives many, 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 many continual shoulders to stand on for neophytes to recognize that they have something to say as well. It gives me great pleasure, Robert Milby.
Thank you, Hayden. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around. Some of the seats have super glue, so you have no choice.
This way.
This way?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me give a few birthdays and death days from the past week. The 4th of January, and he should have been here tonight, Lou O'Neill's birthday. He just turned 88. One of the original Hudson River poets. W.D. Snodgrass, born in 1926, and the great professor Umberto Eco in 1932. There we go, some fans.
Is Snodgrass related to Carrie Snodgrass, the actress?
Probably, but both are dead. Not that that's going to help our problem, but on the 6th, Carl Sandburg, another great American poet, born in 1878. The French artist Gustave Doré, born in 1832. And he hung out with poets. Khalil Gibran, born in Lebanon in 1883. Some of you know his work. The novelist E.L. Doctorow, born in 1931. And if you remember Fairport Convention, which I surely do, Sandy Denny, born in England in 1947. Also in England, the poet Stella Benson, 1892. On the 7th, Robert Duncan, 1919. And the 8th, we have a protege of Charles Dickens and a friend, William Wilkie Collins. So Wilkie Collins, born in 1824. John Neihardt, an American poet and novelist, 1881. The British poet Charles Tomlinson in 1927 in England, and the death of Paul Verlaine, or Verlaine, if you will, in 1896. On the 9th, William Meredith, born in 1919, Joan Baez, born 1941, and the death of Leroy Jones, Amiri Baraka, in 2014 at the age of 79. Today being Friday, we have John Robinson Jeffers. Robinson Jeffers, born near Pittsburgh, Allegheny, which is now the Pittsburgh area, 1887. Folk singer Jim Croce, born 1943. Our former poet laureate Philip Levine, 1928. I think he died 2 years ago. Hudson Valley poet David Keim, 1961. Former Hudson Valley poet and one of my oldest and dearest friends in the world of poetry, Skip Leon, who's alive and well in Texas, just turned today 61. And I understand that from Canada, Neil Peart, did I say his name right? Died today at the age of 67. All right. Just a few for you goats, you Capricorns. Okay. Any goats in the audience you want to identify? We have one? You're no Capricorn. Come now. Carl Sandburg. Where do I begin? Well, I'll say this about Carl Sandburg. So one day, the young Bob Dylan wanted to meet the great poet Carl Sandburg, and so they met. And so Carl Sandburg said to Bob Dylan, "You sure look like an intense young man." That's what he said. Ice handler, I know an ice handler who wears a flannel shirt with pearl buttons the size of $1, and he lugs a 100-pound hunk into the saloon icebox, helps himself to cold ham and rye bread. Tells the bartender it's hotter than yesterday and will be hotter yet tomorrow by Jesus. And he is on his way with his head in the air and a hard pair of fists. He spends $1 or so every Sunday night on a 200-pound woman who washes dishes in the Hotel Morrison. He remembers when the union was organized, he broke the noses of 2 scabs and loosened the nuts on the wheels to come off of 6 different wagons one morning, and he came around and watched the ice melt in the street. All he was sorry for was one of the scabs bit him on the knuckles of the right hand, so they bled when he came around to the saloon to tell the boys about it. Carl Sandburg. All right. Here's another one of Carl Sandburg's poems. I am the people, the mob. I am the people, the mob, the crowd, the mass. Do you know that all the great work of the world is done through me? I am the working man, the inventor, the maker of the world's food and clothes. I am the audience that witnesses history. The Napoleons come from me, and the Lincolns. They die. And then I send forth more Napoleons and Lincolns. I am the seed ground. I am a prairie that will stand for much plowing. Terrible storms pass over me. I forget. The best of me is sucked out and wasted. I forget. Everything but death comes to me and makes me work and give up what I have, and I forget. Sometimes I growl, shake myself, and spatter a few red drops for history to remember. Then I forget. When I, the people, learn to remember, when I, the people, use the lessons of yesterday and no longer forget who robbed me last year, who played me for a fool, then there will be no speaker in all the world say the name the people with any fleck of a sneer in his voice or any far-off smile of derision. The mob, the crowd, the mass will arrive then. Carl Sandburg. You know, that's almost 100 years old. Yeah, that's right. And Robinson Jeffers.
That's awesome.
Oh, yes.
What was the name of that? We the People.
We are the people, or I am the mob, the people. Contemplation of the sword. Reason will not decide at last. The sword will decide. The sword, an obsolete instrument of bronze or steel, formerly used to kill men, but here in the sense of a symbol. The sword, that is, the storms and counterstorms of general destruction, killing of men, destruction of all goods and materials, massacre, more or less intentional, of children and women, destruction poured down from wings, the air made accomplice, the innocent air perverted into assassin and poisoner. The sword, that is treachery and cowardice, incredible baseness, incredible courage, loyalties, insanities. The sword, weeping and despair, mass enslavement, mass torture, frustration of all the hopes that starred man's forehead, tyranny for freedom, horror for happiness, famine for bread, carrion for children. Reason will not decide at last, the sword will decide. Dear God, who are the whole splendor of things and the sacred stars, but also the cruelty and greed, the treacheries and vileness, insanities and filth and anguish, now that this thing comes near us again, I am finding it hard to praise you with a whole heart. I know what pain is, but pain can shine. I know what death is. I have sometimes longed for it. But cruelty and slavery and degradation, pestilence, filth, the pitifulness of men like little hurt birds and animals, if you were only waves beating rock, the wind and the iron-cored earth, the flaming, insolent wildness of sun and stars, with what a heart I could praise your beauty. You will not repent, nor cancel life, nor free man from anguish for many ages to come. You are the only one that tortures himself to discover himself. I am one that watches you and discovers you and praises you in little parables, idle or tragedy, beautiful, intolerable God, the sword that is. I have two sons whom I love. They are twins. They were born in 1916, which seemed to us a dark year of a great war. And they are now of the age that war prefers. The firstborn is like his mother. He is so beautiful that persons I hardly know have stopped me on the street to speak of the grave beauty of the boy's face. The second-born has strength for his beauty. When he strips for swimming, the hero's shoulders and wrestler loins make him seem clothed. The sword that is loathsome disfigurements, blindness, mutilations, locked lips of boys too proud to scream. Reason will not decide at last. The sword will decide. Robinson Jeffers. By the way, that's from 1938. Exactly. Here is another one by Robinson Jeffers. Birds. The fierce musical cries of a couple of sparrowhawks hunting on the headland, hovering and darting, their heads northwestward, prick like silver arrows shot through a curtain of noise of the ocean, trampling in granite, their red backs gleam under my window, around the stone corners, nothing gracefuler, nothing nimbler in the wind. Westward, the wave gleaners, the old gray seagoing gulls are gathered together, the northwest wind wakening their wings to the wild spirals of the wind dance. Fresh as the air, salt as the foam, play birds in the bright wind, fly falcons, forgetting the oak and the pine wood, come gulls from the Carmel sands and the sands at the river mouth, from Lobos and out of the limitless power of the mass of the sea. For a poem needs multitude, multitudes of thoughts, all fierce, all flesh-eaters, musically clamorous, bright hawks that hover and dart headlong, and ungainly, gray hungers fledged with desire of transgression, salt-slimed beaks from the sharp rock shores of the world and the secret waters. Robinson Jeffers. On his birthday, and if there's one modern poet I recommend that you read, it is Robinson Jeffers. Here's a few of mine to see if you will tolerate them. Omen on a January morning. He arrived at dawn to speak with a silent coven atop the grand Victorian building on Main. A large, angry pickup blew through the ice-stern street like a troubled autumn leaf, dislodged from my thoughts. Aurora's disciple did not flinch at his warm chimney pulpit. He turned to watch the purple clouds scab to consternation's gray, saw me observing him from my garret window. Fellow vultures called, crouching on the rooftop, shoving the horde. He raised one wing from his shabby perch, no maestro hawk, but a playwright above drowsing commuters. Snow keeps memory. Ice jails desire, throwing plans to disarray. I cannot see their breath, but the 15 black emissaries are a morning collegium, watched by a chorus of crows who bark challenges to a waking snowstorm. Tonight's full moon is often called the wolf moon. Beneath the wolf moon, abandoned cottage at Lonely Lake Dream, dark illuminated, a glowing necklace beneath a hat of snow. Frozen bird nest, cold dark lake wearing his January coat for 12th night. The 7 sisters gazed from wolf moon sky. Oak sentries observed. Ghost lit a blaze in a fieldstone fireplace. Laughter steeped the cottage. Spirits read to each other. Minds wandered rafters. Scent of melancholy hid in recesses. I felt them behind me at the old sink and cold stove, cooking, brewing coffee. Ghosts' heads touching, they desperately poured gasoline from a large red can into the car's tank. Deceased, still reaching on a frozen night. All right, this one I finished. I'll do 2 more. This one I finished this morning. And this is what we're about to embark into, to my regret. False spring. Sisyphus boulders, Promethean cinders, Ulysses' sailboat wrecked, recast as Winterreise's toil. Walking backwards to the past, perpetual snares, swamp gases, feral noises in forlorn woodlands, another cliff, another fen. When, oh when will the trail lay clear of brambles, other peasants' foibles, other people's troubles? When can I tend my own vineyards and gardens without playing chess in the urban dominion? Target of a modern trajectory, a cog in the field of the penitent's factory? Let me trudge to a one-room schoolhouse. I'll keep it secret. I'll make a pact to stay in the mists of the atavistic. Leave the path of an itinerant preacher. Swear, and I'll promise not to come back. Going up the country.
One of those mornings, eh?
Yeah. Baby, do you want to go? Going up the country. All right, all jokes aside, on the 12th of January, 2010, at 4:53 p.m. local time, Haiti was struck by a magnitude 7.0 earthquake. This was the country's most severe earthquake in over 200 years. The 2010 Haiti earthquake was reported to have left between 220,000 and 300,000 people dead and up to 1.6 million homeless. Haitian tectonics. Just after the new year began, the ground shook and writhed. It was not voodoo, no inquisition, no apocalyptic prequel to 2012, but a tectonic shift. Death 7.0. If it can happen here, on the impoverished island, another Eden spoiled by international commerce, it will happen in your country, a human earthquake, as the republic shakes and collapses. Families, entire families crushed And the crying, the endless crying. The little girl, tears streaming down her dust-smeared cheeks, ran through lanes of devastation. I cannot breathe in my casket of rubble and heat. I am thirsty and my legs hurt. Why won't they come? A hospital parking lot swells with the wounded. In this heat, there is no place to cool, to wash, no place for a matron to change her clothes. Aftershocks, after birth of rubble, bricks, dust, and dirt. He tapped and tapped on the pipes in the dark, close basement until the air was gone. Death, 6.1, drum beats and Sunday Mass in the midst of rubble. Fragments of the cathedral and the bleak landscape does not stop the faithful. Come, children. From your squatter camps near your demolished homes, we ask for food and you send us troops. We pray to God and he sends us death. Reverberations, shockwaves, birthquake, and pledges of money. The reek of our swollen corpses, bodies scooped like manure and tossed to a pit. This mad carnival of men and women, homeless, in collapsed neighborhoods. Who is that with toothpaste in his nostrils? No longer will there be any silence at night. His hand reached down into the slab of dust-covered concrete, jagged shadow. Her hand, ripped and bleeding, reached up into the raw daylight. These were our families. We are refugees, trapped on our island in dehydration, exiled by earthquake, death in hovels and tarps, water, not M16s, bread, not bullets. This is an invasion. The only crude in the ground is our blood. The little boy, tears streaming down his dust-smeared cheeks, ran through chaos and remnants of his slum, away from the soldiers in the heat and the stench.